Coming to you straight from the Rio Grande and beyond. Broadcasting to the four corners of the globe. So grab your seat, your coffee, or your sundowner.
Okay, everybody, here we go.
On point, as always. This is Gloves Off. Gloves Off.
Back at you in Gloves Off, and today I have a great guest, brother from another mother, Warren Johnson. He's up in Dallas, and he has his own podcast. But we're going to be touching base on a lot of stuff that goes on, and it's happening here in Texas, and it's happening now. Good morning. How we doing?
I'm doing well, Paul. How are you doing?
Doing great. Good to see you. Good to see you.
You too, man. You too. Been a long time.
Been a while. How's your podcast going? Doing good?
It's kind of dormant for right now, but I'm getting ready to crank it up. In fact, I'm trying to identify somebody that's has more technical expertise than I do. You know, as you saw, my wife had to come in and help me get started on this, so I'm in need of help. So that's the game plan. I want to try to put out a quality product. So if it takes a little time to do that, then I'm willing to do that.
Absolutely. If you need any help, please jump on board and give me a call.
Absolutely, man. I appreciate the offer.
And then maybe we can set you on a good track, which way to go.
Got it.
Absolutely. So what do you think? What do you think's what's going on with Texas? It's up and down. It's a roller coaster ride right now.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on, and I think it's kind of by design, which we'll cover a little bit later, but I want to hit on Uvalde. And kind of my point is now when anybody says the word or the name of the city Uvalde, everybody knows what it means. And I'm afraid that's the way it's going to be for the near future and maybe forever. Uvalde will mean police incompetence, whether it's rightfully deserved or not. I think the jury's not even out. The case hasn't really been presented yet. And why it's taking so long, I don't know. But I tell you, one guy I don't trust in all this, and just because I don't trust him doesn't mean he's a bad guy. It just means I need more information about him, and I'm watching him with a close eye. And that is the DPS chief. I think his name is McCraw. Yeah. He got out there early on, and just my initial reaction to him, he just seemed, I don't know, unsure of himself. The information wasn't good, which obviously turned out to be correct. And then as I began to investigate who he was, he found out he's a retired FBI agent. Okay. So he grew up in a culture where lying and deceit and an agenda is part of the game. And so I'm concerned that he may be, playing everybody for whatever reasons. I don't know. But like I said, that jury is, I hadn't even gone to the jury yet. We're still waiting for information. It just is coming out piecemeal. And I think that's to everybody's detriment. I know the poor citizens and, of course, the poor parents that lost children are just, I'm sure, sick of the whole thing. And for that, I feel the most pity.
Absolutely. Number one, our hearts and our condolences to the families, number one.
Absolutely.
And Uvalde in general. I think this was, like you said, police incompetence. And it was police incompetence to be shown throughout, because this is Uvalde. They had training. You can't say they didn't have training. They had training. They had they had equipment just like everybody else does.
Yes.
So if this is a mirror of what is actually going on throughout Texas, then we're in deep trouble.
Absolutely.
So if this happens there, believe it's going to happen somewhere else, and we better understand that and be ready for that. And it's funny that you say the FBI, because every time there's a mass shooting, the FBI seems to be involved inside it somewhere.
Yes.
They're the first ones on the scene, or they're waiting for them to get on the scene. So it puts a doubt in people's mind. I think right now, people in general, brother, is that they do not trust the law enforcement. They do not have faith in it. Even though we have some great police officers and they're great first responders. Let's get those guys out of the way. But I'm talking when it comes to this, I think there's something that they've missed a point and it's no longer there, that trust. And we have to
Yeah,
gain it back some way.
you're absolutely right. I mean, the rank and file are great. They do the job and they do it well for the most part, but it's the leadership stinks. Somebody told me once you get past lieutenant level in a big police force, then it's all politics, and that's the way it runs out, and that's just really sad. But I tell you, I will give one good thing to the FBI. I had somebody told me about this, and I thought it was a great idea. What do you do about these mass shootings? And the FBI years ago, in response to serial killing, all the serial killings that were going on in the 70s, started in the late 60s with Zodiac, and they made that movie Dirty Harry about it, and it just went on and on through the 70s and 80s. I mean, there was even a time that said only white men were committing mass murders. And then I think it was, I can't think of that black guy's name, in Atlanta in the late 70s. So it turned out it's not a race issue, it's a sick mind issue. So the FBI put together a really good profile of a serial killer. And the FBI and the other police agencies were able to use that and stop a lot of serial killers before they got started, at least identify them early. So really, if they want to redeem themselves, is for the FBI to put together a profile of potential school shooters or mass shooters of any kind. And that way we could begin to identify. I mean, we already hear people saying, well, we saw this guy, the Uvalde shooter, put this stuff out on Facebook, and he was killing, cruel to animals. I mean, there's a whole list there. So if we could get them to do that, they could certainly redeem themselves, but I still don't trust them.
Yeah, you're like me. I understand, and I understand how everything's heading this way, and I understand the push for so many red flags and so on and so forth. And right now, Senate, and I think they just passed a bill that they're going to allow the red flags to be state by state. And that's a dangerous situation, because they wanted to make a law that somebody, anonymous tip can call into the police and say that deems their neighbor or you or I or anybody that you were a danger to yourself or to society. They'll have a court case without your presence, and then they'll come kick in your door and remove your guns the next day. That to me we have to stop with that type of nonsense, because right now, with the way things are going, anybody on Facebook can you see the way they retaliate on people on Facebook. Just imagine what's going to happen in the real world.
Yeah, the red flag can go on somebody's record for no good reason at all. And just like my father got out of World War II with what's now called PTSD. I mean, he came out of World War II with it's called PTSD now, called something else back then. And he would have been flagged coming out. If it had been now, he would have been, and I would have missed out on how to handle a gun, because he and I went hunting. He taught me how to shoot a gun, taught me all about gun safety and all that stuff. We go hunting quite a bit as a kid, but he certainly wouldn't have been able to have weapons and wouldn't have been able to defend us. In fact, I recall one time where he held a potential burglar out in the front yard with his .38 automatic pistol till the police arrived, and he wouldn't have been able to do that if he could have a gun. So
you're absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. Back in school, you remember this, most of the pickups had a gun in the back.
Oh, yeah. Even in the big city of Dallas. I remember some guys. We called them goat ropers back then in the late 60s, early 70s. Yeah, absolutely. It was, and I can remember they even had a shooting class.
Yeah.
I think they even had a rifle range downstairs in the school for the ROTC guys. Of course, they were just shooting 22s, but still they were getting experience with guns. And of course, that's who has the most fear of guns and weapons, is those that don't know anything about it. Absolutely. So they just fear what they don't know.
I was growing up, and we grew up in Louisville, Kentucky, and 4th, 5th, and 6th grade, you had a gun safety course. It was mandatory. And the police officer came down for 2 weeks, and he taught a gun safety course.
What a great idea.
And All of a sudden, we came to Texas, it was no longer there. Well, and that was the end of the story. So I think we have enough officers to do that in the
Mhm.
schools to start teaching that. And because number one, it's not the kid that knows it; it's a kid that doesn't know anything about it that it's the accidental shootings that occur. And I understand the laws that they're coming out with, and they want to raise it to 21. Okay, they want to raise it, have a background check. We should, and we
Mhm.
do anyway. But what happens is it has to be a little bit more reserved. You have to have maybe a 3 day. People want 18 day, 3 day, 5 day check. If you can't do that with the computer and with the technology that we have right now, forget about it. You know what I'm saying? So
Oh yeah, and things can be hacked, and it's just I've got I agree with that to some point, but I've also got a what do you call it? I like to be a strict uh, in my interpretation or strict interpretation of the Constitution, and I keep going back to the Second Amendment, and it shall not be infringed. So, what is infringement? Is a background check an infringement? I mean, I can see we deny people the right to vote because they committed a felony. But and these are philosophical things. I'm not saying I'm
sure,
with
sure.
one side or the other, but I mean, does a former felon or a felon? It's not a former felon have a right to defend themselves? Of course, it goes back to, well, if it's a convicted serial killer who got out on a technicality, he shouldn't have a weapon. So yeah, I debate with myself on that constantly, just to
Yeah,
try to find the right.
absolutely. And
Yeah.
you read the second, and it says we shall have a well-regulated militia. Now, what's well regulated now? Maybe we have to maybe we have to start something to do with a census of the town, or what it is, or the county of what the county is. For example, you have I'm just going to throw a number out there. You have a 100,000 populous county, and all of a sudden you have maybe 5% of that is what has to go train with the militia, with the sheriff's office, maybe several times a year, and have that done for it to be well regulated. Because all of a sudden, then when something does happen, they can use those resources in there. And now, when you look at militias, there's only four people, as it's stated right now, that can actually activate it. One is a governor, one is a county judge,
Mhm.
one is a county tax assessor, and the other one is the county sheriff. So those are the actually ones that can actually activate a militia. So all these people running around with guns waving and
Yeah.
parades and stuff, fine and dandy, but I think we should start regulating them as well, as it states, because it says a well-regulated militia. So what's regulated? Maybe they have to learn not only the laws, they also have to learn first aid. Maybe because when a militia does come in and the National Guard is activated or the Army is activated, they actually fall into ranks with them.
Yeah.
So what happens? Do we need people that are also going to be part of the militia, that are nurses and paramedics and cooks,
Yeah.
and you know what I'm saying?
I totally agree. In fact, we kind of see that playing out right now in Ukraine, where almost the entire populace is now a militia.
Sure.
And it sounds far fetched, but still, I mean, Ukraine was a um, a booming economy, even though they had some corruption issues, but they were doing well, and then all of a sudden they get invaded, which is not. And history has shown that Japan and even Mexico during World War One declined to or had to take into consideration the possibility of invading the United States, because literally they said that everyone in the United States has a weapon. And so it wouldn't be feasible, for us to just we wouldn't be fighting just an army, we'd be fighting a populace.
Right.
So yeah, I'm in agreement with you there. Somehow I think it needs to be a little more fine-tuned and activated of what is a militia, and let's create that militia. And certainly not the National Guard. That's another animal.
And that's another animal, and that's what our governor keeps on saying, that the Texas National Guard or the Texas Guard is actually the militia. No, it's not. The militia is a
No,
couple of people.
Yeah, that's under his control. Yeah, and I read a great book, and I'm going to go back and reread it again now that we've visited this topic. It was printed out. It was published in the '60s. It's called "Miracle in Philadelphia," and it was about how they came up and why they came up with the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. And it's a great way to look inside the minds of those that actually created it back there in the late 1700s. I got to revisit that book. That's a great book if you ever get a chance to read it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And when you look at stuff when they were coming of age, some of those great minds were 20, 21 years old, 25 years old.
Oh, they were kids almost. They were considered. Exactly.
Exactly right. Lafayette
Yeah.
was 21 years old when he helped.
Yeah. And boy, thank God those guys came together when they did, at the time they did, at the age they did. It's really fascinating and just like a once in a lifetime. The sad thing is, I think, it's only been 200 years and a little over 200 years, but, we're facing some, Rome lasted 1,000 years. I mean, we should too, but it's like we're coming apart at the seams here lately.
And it's sad because I understand people need opinions and diversity. Don't get me wrong. And with all due respect, but it seems to me now it's kind of like it's either this way or we're going to go after you, we're going to destroy you, or it's this way. And if you don't like it this way, we're still going to destroy you. And that seems to be, how can I put it? If you've ever been in a fight in several in the time frame, that's what I'm saying. You have a gut feeling when you go someplace, there's going to be a fight. Understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And right now, that tension, that feeling is in the air wherever you go. And during COVID, before COVID, I'm gonna say this: before COVID, everything was kind of passive. Everybody there was nothing in mind, and COVID kind of put people against the wall. And now people are on tense. Yes, we're post COVID, and they're still moving forward, but that feeling is still there.
That's great mistrust. Absolutely. We were really rocking along and had an era of good feeling until
Boom.
March of 2020.
Absolutely.
And it all got ripped out. In fact, I'm glad you brought that up. It's one of the two it's a good way to segue into two of my little items I had here. One, we are still operating in the state of Texas under the Texas Disaster Act of 1975. Abbott put that into effect in, I think, April of 2020. And of course, it was only meant to be a short term. And here we are, 26, 27 months. And it's really not affecting us now, so nobody really cares about it. But, if we get a Beto or if we get somebody else in the governor's office and that hasn't gone away, or if Abbott, goes sour on us, then he literally has dictatorial powers. And that thing was really only meant for, speaking of what the framers meant, the framers of that particular act, it was really meant for hurricanes and tornadoes and other natural disasters. And so they kind of reached out and grabbed this and said COVID is a natural disaster, and they certainly made us feel like it. But yeah, I think that's something that everybody needs to be aware of and contact their state representative in Texas and say, what's going on with this Texas Disaster Act? Why? He just renewed it a couple of months ago. And to no fanfare or nothing. And it's literally, he's got his boot over our heads. It's not on our neck yet, but if he decides to shift his weight a little bit, it certainly can.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. And that's the problem that I have, because as a small business owner and entrepreneur in that sense, and you as well, it's destroyed the economy. I mean, here in Laredo, the small businesses are gone. They destroyed them. Not that they're all gone. There's still some here, but if you go to the mall, I think there's something like 37 stores that are just closed out of the 60 something that are there. That's more than half. Downtown is a disaster. I can imagine how bad it is.
Yeah, if you guys are out there like Laredo, it's kind of out there by itself. And if you guys get hit like that, I mean, that's a major blow. If you lose half the businesses in a mall, imagine the owner of that mall. I mean, he's probably in the back of his mind, I might have to sell this thing because I'm sure he's losing money by now, trying to keep everybody afloat. And if he sells that thing, and what happens to the businesses that are already there? Where do they go?
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's a major dilemma that a lot of people don't realize. And That's another good segue into something I want to talk about here too, is property tax here in Texas, which is, getting to where it's unsustainable. I'm in the real estate business here, and I got people that are moving in from out of state, and they're just utterly shocked at the property tax. Now, great, yeah, we don't have income tax, and our sales tax is kind of low, but our property tax is just way out of whack. And that's, you know, average house, say now, I mean, I remember when $500,000 was a lot of money, but now the average house is about $500,000, and it doesn't look that great either. And the taxes on that are, about $1,000 a month, and that's unsustainable, especially if you work. The whole idea was you start out young, you buy yourself a home, and you live in there, and you wait 30 years, and you pay it off. Then all of a sudden, you don't have a rental payment anymore or a house payment. But now you got paying rent to the ultimate landlord, which is the state of Texas, and that comes through mainly fully half of that is from school districts who are, now parents can't speak at school districts. It was a Uvalde school district cop that couldn't handle the job over there. So it seems like, I remember my wife, who you just met a little while ago, is from the Valley. She's from San Benito. And we went down to a high school reunion of hers. She was graduated in 75. We think we went down to the 35th reunion. Anyway, we went to a homecoming game, and San Benito was playing Brownsville. And the stadium was nice, and seemed to be fairly new. It wasn't one of these big mega stadiums, but it was nice, clean, aluminum, fairly new benches, and the field was in great condition. And the team split. It was like a 21-14 game. The kids played good football. It looks like they were coached well. Looks like there was only 4 coaches on each side. 4 for San Benito, 4 for Brownsville. The stadium was packed. The band came out wearing these big uniforms and the big top hats, and they played really well, and they marched well. Both of them did. And then just a couple of weeks later, I come back to Dallas, and I go to a game with a rival where I went to high school, Sunset High School, and the rival with Adamson. Sure. We went to a football game there, kind of in South Dallas. And the stadium was this big, ugly concrete structure, looked like a Soviet designer. The kids, the football was terrible. They must have had 10 coaches, 12 coaches on each side. With all those coaches, they still couldn't get those kids to play decent football. And I don't buy this stuff that's, you get a lot of Hispanics moving over there, and they're soccer players. Hey, we're all Hispanics down there in San Benito and Brownsville, and they were playing great football. Sure. And I say, and the band for these 2 Dallas high schools, when they went out there, they were in khaki shorts and polo shirts. And the excuse is, but it's so humid out here in Dallas. They got nothing on the Valley as far as, weather. Mm-hmm. So we're paying all this money into school districts, and we're getting nothing for it. Now, San Benito and Brownsville seem to be getting really good return out of their money, but up here in the big cities, we're getting nothing. And it's a shame. It's a real shame.
Absolutely. And, one thing that happened going back to Uvalde is that they were checking on what the security was, the budget wise, for each one of these school districts. Mm-hmm. Most across the state of Texas was anywhere between $35,000 to $50,000 per year. The one here in UISD in Laredo was $700 and something thousand dollars a year. LISD was something 700 and something thousand. Wow. Houston was leading, and then Dallas was coming in, I think, 5th. There was another school district between Dallas. So, and you don't hear that much of these shootings coming in and everything else. They have those police forces, especially here. And we had an attempted shooting several years ago, but it was squashed and it was stopped by the UISD police department, which they did a great job. And it was never heard about again. It was not heard about in the newspaper. It was not taken anywhere else. It was just kind of squashed. But there were certain things that they were talking about security-wise, and one of them was placing an 8-foot fence around the perimeter of each school and having one entrance and out. And some of the other school districts that stuff like this had happened, they had no fence. And Uvalde had a small little 3-foot fence that, the mom jumped over and got her kids out, so we have to really start using the money, like you're saying, and use it wisely. One, security of the kids. Second, if they're going to be playing and everybody seems to be paying more attention to the sports, then they better be looking good as well, because money's
Yeah,
going out there also.
it's going to have to go big time. Yeah, I can see that. And I kind of course, covered property tax here. Oh, and kind of start on a new subject. Hit on the list here. There's a lot of stuff been going on this last couple of weeks. There's a lot of stuff in the news, and of course, one of them is the Roe v. Wade Dobbs
Sure.
that overturned that, and so everybody, especially the left, has gone absolutely apoplectic over this. And actually, it doesn't get rid of abortion. Sad to say, it doesn't get rid of abortion. I think abortion is a very bad thing. Sticking on what's real and what's the legality. All this does is turn it back to the states and let them make their own rules, depending on how the voters want it. And some states are going to be out there and they're going to allow abortion up to and probably even after birth.
Or like California, that's what they wanted.
California, New York, and as ghoulish as this is, there's going to be somebody that's going to take advantage of this, and they're going to put together these abortion excursions where everybody meet up here on a Monday morning, and we'll take you to California, and we'll have mimosas flying out there and champagne coming back, and we'll have a luncheon, have your abortion, and then you can come home. So this Facebook and other social media has just been full of this. Oh my God, abortion is totally outlawed, and now women are going to die, and so on. And it's just sad to see, but it doesn't stop it at all. It just puts it back in the states where it should be. So in that effect, it's a good thing.
But what other people, the left doesn't realize that not so long ago, the Democrats controlled everything.
Yeah,
Nothing was done.
They controlled it big time. It wasn't just like 50.
Nothing was done.
50 to 49. It was like 75 senators versus just 25, or 70% of the House was Democrat. And I mean, it was a rarity to have a Republican. I remember the days, and I'm sure you do too, that in Texas and in the South, the real election was a Democratic primary. Didn't matter who ran as a Republican because they were going to get beat badly anyway.
That's Laredo, Texas, right here. Laredo, that's the way it is. Yeah. For every Republican vote here, it's about between 18 to 21.
Really?
That's spread. So,
how great is it now down there that was it Maya Flores, the lady that won?
She's further south. She's further south. And she did a good job.
Yeah, she did. And it sounds like she's really sharp. She's really articulate. And man, actually born in Mexico, came over here legally, became a legal citizen, and seems sharp as a tack. I mean, how great is that? That is so cool. Of course, a lot of people don't realize she's only got it for a few months.
Yeah.
She's got to run for election in November. Of course, she'll have a great head start. So I certainly hope she returns. And that was really great. We needed that shot in the arm. I think these Democrats, I think, there's so much that they're throwing at us, this craziness and this hyper emotionalism, like Roe v. Wade and all these other crazy things that keep coming. I think they're doing that on purpose. I think they know that we know that this is all craziness they're throwing out there, but they're doing it to keep us off balance, to get, it's like so many shiny objects. It's like a cat in a room or a kitten, and you throw all kinds of different stuff and we go all over the place. I think one thing we need to do, and I'm now a precinct chair for the Republican Party in Dallas, and one thing I'm trying to do is get local club. I live in an area where there's a lot of high-rise condos. Sure. And so you can't really go knock on doors and those things. So I'm working on trying to get clubs in each one of those buildings where they can, meet and come up with ideas. But I think everybody should pick something that is they feel comfortable in doing and feel a project or whatever, and focus in on that rather than, I see a lot of time wasted, I think, on Facebook. And Messenger and Twitter about,
Absolutely.
coming out and just parroting what's going out there. Oh my gosh, can you believe they're doing this? Oh my gosh, can you believe they're doing that? And they keep doing that. Then you just pick one thing, focus on it, and attack that. And if we get people doing that in different camps, then we can finally, I think, put this thing to rest. And we don't have much time because the election's coming in just a few months.
Absolutely. And it's going to be a good one. It's going to be an election that you're going to see. I think you're going to see a lot of the incumbents that were around during COVID not be there anymore.
Oh God, I think it'll be so great. I think it'll be so great.
We say that, but then all of a sudden now we have Abbott there. We won't be so great if you get Beto, but I think that there might be a change.
Well, I do too, but here's the thing we got to look out for as well. Not only let's not try to pick up everything, not try to do everything with focus, but also get out the vote. It's not so much registering people to vote as it is. I think Republicans have the lowest turnout. I think last election, they were just 13%. So we don't need to go out and register more voters. We just need to get the voters that are registered to get out and vote. And so that's where it's another thing people can, that's another project they can take on, is finding friends and family that are already registered to vote and would most likely vote Republican, and encourage them to get out there to vote. That's how one former Dallas County Republican Party chairman told me when I had lunch with him a couple of years ago, and I was so frustrated with everything, I was going to resign being precinct chair. He called me to lunch and we talked about it. And he said how Dallas became so blue was that Democrats would use a good ground game, and they'd have people that would go register voters, and they would keep track of those voters. They got their name, their address, their email address, and phone numbers. And they were in charge of 10, 20, 100, whatever. And when it came time to go out and vote, they would text every one of those people they were in charge with and say, okay, polls are open, you need to get out and vote. And at the end of every day, you can tell who voted. You can't tell who they voted for, but you can tell who voted. So those people would look at their list and say, oh, okay, you haven't voted yet. You need to get out and vote. And as the time would get closer to the polls closing, they would say, hey, you haven't voted yet. I'll come over and pick you up at 10 a.m. We're going to go to the polls and vote. Give the devil his due. Those Democrats work hard and they're organized. And the sad thing about conservatives is we're kind of independently minded. And so, it's kind of like herding cats, trying to get work together, and it's hard to do. She said, no, I know better than you do. We're going to go and do it my way.
Absolutely. You're absolutely correct. And you see that happening here. You see that happening in every campaign, not election, in every campaign that's here in Webb County. You have somebody they go out there and get all the voter registrations. It doesn't tell you who to vote for, but it just tells you who voted and who didn't vote. And they'll start calling those people up. And you see that over and over. It's one of the tactics they use here.
Yeah. It's just, give those guys credit. They do that, man. They do that.
And they're ahead of the ball game when it comes against Republicans in there.
Yeah, they certainly are. And it may come down to, Texans really need to focus on Texas. I think the most important elections are the local elections, city council and school board. Those things affect us most directly, and that's where we can make the most impact. Then you can work your way up to state rep and state senator and the DA and all those guys. But trying to focus on, people get so wrapped up in their U.S. representative or the senator, either Cornyn or Cruz or whoever's president. And they do have an effect on us, but those guys on city council have more effect. Like I said, same with school board, because that's where most of our property taxes come from.
Right. But I'm going to tell you one thing, you're absolutely correct. And folks do not understand. I start seeing a lot of Republican candidates, they're shooting for the stars. They've never done anything before. They've never held any office. They've never even worked on a campaign. And they're going for U.S. Congress, U.S. Senator, U.S. Congress, U.S. Senator, Texas Senator, Texas State Representative. What have you done for your community? You haven't done nothing. You have to start off somewhere. And guess what happens? They go, oh, we're doing grassroots. Really? Grassroots? This is what grassroots means for me. That all the constables in the county are Democrat.
Yeah, the constables, absolutely, those guys. And JPs.
The JPs are Democrats as well. You have most of your district judges and your sheriffs are Democrat in the county. You have most of your school board trustees are also Democrat. You're going to tell me you're going to go knock on doors when these people will just activate those machines they already have and tell their people, go vote for this Democrat instead of voting for that. So you're outnumbered already. Right now, what the Republican Party needs to be doing is putting people in every single school board election, every single council poll, and every single JP election that goes under, and as well as city council if you have a partisan city council. Laredo does not, but if you have it.
You're totally correct and spot on. And that's kind of here in the Dallas County Republican, here in Dallas County, there's a group of us. We've been frustrated with the leadership over the past several years. And there's a group of us that are trying to overcome that, trying to be more vocal, trying exactly what you said, recruiting people to get out there and run. We've got a lady, Lauren Davis, who's running against Clay Jenkins, who was the COVID czar for Dallas County. So we're talking about county judge. She has an excellent chance of beating Clay Jenkins, who is like Biden's chairperson here, down here in Dallas. And so you just focus locally. Don't get much wider than the county. City and county, stay on those things and find you good candidate and recruit good candidates. It's another thing we're trying to do, is trying to fill every race. Because you're right, so many of these races just go without a candidate. I mean, just the Democrat is on the ballot, they get it by default. And that's a terrible way to get in. Because they feel beholden to no one.
Absolutely. And not only that is when that occurs, and when a good Republican comes out, you don't have the numbers because that base is not there. Mm-hmm. To me, grassroots is not standing on a street corner with a sign. Grassroots is actually being able to go inside. I also tell people, hear this: if you're not going to win, and you know that your county's dramatically Democrat, they did it to us. They put Democrats inside Republican offices. They're called rhinos. And guess what? And we voted them in, and we continue voting them in. Why don't we do the same thing? Put good Republicans in a good area, and we know they're going to win if they say they're Democrat. Stick them in there. The philosophy.
Great ways. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Great ways to get grassroots, exactly like what you're doing now with podcasts. I mean, you're kind of Laredo focused initially, and you kind of broaden out after that. But you're absolutely right. And I see some of your Facebook posts where you're Laredo focused, but broaden up after that. And encourage others. I mean, you have certain people who are better at other things than others. Sending out emails on a regular basis with good information and good topics. Luckily, I am married. Oh, shouldn't hear that. I am married to a door knocking machine. She loves to talk to people. In fact, she was Miss San Benito in 1975, first Hispanic Miss San Benito ever. And her father was the first Hispanic city councilman in San Benito. So she's got it in her blood. She, sat at her dad's knee and learned how to do all this stuff. But when I ran for city council in 2019 against the left-wing incumbent and the kind of a centrist, there was three of us. But the left-wing ideologue was the one we were really after, who was crazy. And my wife, she literally, we knocked on 3,000 doors. And she knocked on about 2,990 of them. She liked it. I remember we'd pull up to say, okay, we'd had a voter roll. We'd pull up to a house and she said, you just sit here, let me go take care of this. I said, great, Heidi. But you can find people that are good door knockers and like to talk to people and get those people involved and get them out door knocking. Not everybody's a door knocker. Not everybody wants to do that. I'm certainly wasn't that great at it. It was painful to me, but I did it. But anyway, so I did learn how to identify people's tools, whether podcasters like you, people that send out good emails. I've identified a couple of good email senders, people that are good on phone calling, and so on. Put together a team.
But and here, and it's sad, but here the Republicans here in Webb County, they're split down the middle, and it's kind of bad news because they can't get. I think it's throughout Texas, really, that it's split down the middle.
It is. I wish we had enough Republicans here in Dallas County to say we're split down the middle, but we're not split. Most of them lean left.
Yeah, that's what happened. And I'm not talking about left or right. It's kind of like, oh, we're going to do it this way. We're going to, let's get down. That's why you're losing,
Yeah, well, they're not. Again, it goes back to that independence thing. We're so independently minded that sometimes it's hard for us to work together. And so we're going to have to temper our egos down a little bit and our pride, suck it up, and be better leaders and be better followers too. And you can certainly lead in one aspect and follow in another aspect and be helpful. And I'm trying to encourage, as many people as I can up here in Dallas County to do that. And I think they're listening, so we're getting better at it.
Sure. And it's just going to be a good one. Just going to be a good race in November.
I'm really excited. I'm really excited about this race. I could really be a turnover. And, for the first time in my life, I may hold an election watch party. I usually stay up and watch my dad was the former Republican Party chairman for Ellis County. This was in 1960, and we're Catholic. And though he was out there campaigning for Nixon, Kennedy was Catholic. And so obviously a lot of Catholics were voting for him because he was Catholic. And I don't want to say we weren't welcome at the Catholic St. John's and Ennis, but a number of people tended to make that known. But anyway, and I remember we held a parade from the Knights of Columbus Hall just outside Ennis. We were waiting for some cars to come in from Waxahachie to go downtown and press out stickers for Nixon. But only 2 cars showed up. There was only 2 cars there, so our parade was 4 cars to go to downtown Ennis and pass out Nixon love stickers. So anyway, I learned it early on, and I've really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed the political game, and even the vitriol I'd like to see tempered down a little bit, but I guess I get cranky in my old age. Who knows?
Absolutely. But it's going to be a good ride. And I think we have to touch base in a couple of months and see which way everybody's going and see.
I'd love to, man. And I'll probably tap into some of your knowledge about podcasts, trying to crank that up. I'd like to get something going before the election.
Absolutely. Just give me I'm a phone call away. You know my number. All we have to do is sit down and we can take it that route. But let's keep in contact, because I would like to see what's actually happening in Dallas as well, because it affects Texas as well. And I think the main races here is number one. I think with what's going on the border, I think that's something that we better be watching. I think it's going to get worse before it gets better.
Yeah, those 56 people in San Antonio found out it got a lot worse.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So we have there's a lot on our plates.
And what gets me with that is they passed 2 border patrol checkpoints.
I saw that this morning.
So there has to be something
leaning out the cab, talking with his big smile on face. Of course, he was stoned on meth. Yeah, and it's just insane. Things have got to change.
So there's something wrong with that picture as well.
Oh yeah. All right, Paul, man, it was great.
It was great. You keep active, keep moving forward. Let me know what's going on. We'll touch base. Let's give it October, September for us to touch base right before the election.
Love to do it, Paul. Love to do it.
Till next time.
All right, buddy. All right, so long, pal.